Well, I am so excited to welcome Mehrnoosh Sameki from Microsoft today on this webinar. One of the exciting things for Credo AI over the past 2 years is we've been working very strategically to create the Global Partner Program. And this Global Partner Program at Credo AI is really all about how do we infuse trust in artificial intelligence, a technology that is transformational beyond words. And at Credo AI, through our platform and through integrations with multiple partners, but also with partnerships with consulting firms, hyperscalers, et cetera, we are making sure that we can be the infrastructure of trust, especially at a very monumental time in this technology. And we believe that we can't do it alone. And this is one of the reasons we have brought in some amazing partners on this journey with us. So today I am really excited to welcome Mehrnoosh Sameki from Microsoft. Mehrnoosh, welcome. Very excited to have this conversation. So let's get started with, tell us a little bit more about your role at Microsoft and especially, your work on the Azure AI Foundry.
First of all, thank you so much for having me. Credo AI journey has been fascinating to me. I've been following your journey for as long as I remember, and you're definitely one of the reasons why I decided to enter the responsible AI world to begin with about 6 years ago. Um, as you mentioned, my name is Mehrnoosh Sameki. I have been with Microsoft Core AI team for the past 6 years, always building responsible AI tooling. My personal mission, and I feel like also my team's mission, is to build tools that make this buzzword of responsible AI very implementable and easy to operate and operationalize in a dev lifecycle. And now I specifically oversee areas of evaluation and AI governance in our product called AI Foundry, and really make sure that folks who are developing generative AI applications and agentic systems, which is definitely the interest right now, have access to the right tools in their development lifecycle, very weaved into the very core of how they build AI, to evaluate it, to observe it, and monitor it post-production, and also govern it, which we're going to talk through partnership with Credo AI. So happy to be here and happy to share more about the products as well.
Thank you so much for that. Could you tell us a little bit more about what is Azure AI Foundry and what capabilities is it bringing to the developers, especially in artificial intelligence?
Um, Azure AI Foundry is truly a platform that wants to make is on a mission to make it super easy for you to develop your generative AI applications from scratch, from the stage of selecting what is the best model for you. There are so many models out there. Even on Foundry, we have 2,000 plus models that we host. Which one is right for you? Then helping you with how you put together your meta prompt and parameters, or how you build your agents, how to try it in the playground or with the SDK in the code first experience. From there, it gives you tools to evaluate it. The good old metrics that we had, like false positive rates, false negative rate, all those things, we need a modernized version of those for generative AI application and agents, which is what Foundry provides, and then helps you diagnose and trace why certain measurement is going wrong, or is low, down, whatever is not per your expectation. From there, it enables you to deploy that generative AI application or agentic application and then continue to monitor it post-production. It also has capabilities like fine-tuning in case you have a base model and you want to fine-tune it per your scenario, and of course, continue to evaluate and monitor it. So it truly is supposed to be the single place where your all of the needs that you have truly in development of and deployment of a generative AI application is addressed, and that's we are very much shooting for, with observability in every single stage of it.
And I think you bring up a really good point because this entire design to development to production of not only Gen AI applications, but now AI agents does require the right level of oversight and controls. Because as you and I know, governance is not just about compliance to regulation. It is making sure that you can infuse trust at every step of of this AI development lifecycle. So maybe Mehrnoosh would love to understand uh, especially your perspective. For the longest time, there's been a divide between the AI developers and the governance teams, which you are hoping to bring, especially with Credo AI partnership and integration into Azure AI Foundry. Why is it so critical to bring governance into the AI development environment?
That's a really, really great question because I feel like one of the biggest hurdles to enterprise AI adoption today is lack of clear governance frameworks. In fact, whenever I talk to customers, many of them talk about very siloed and manual risk assessment processes. And they also always complain about kind of mismatch between developer workflows and compliance needs. So what we see with generative AI and agentic AI is the very fact that, first of all, the regulatory complexity is growing. We now have EU AI Act, NIST, California Act, so many different frameworks that folks, depending on where they are, depending on what is relevant to them, they're concerned about. But at the same time, there is, in fact, misalignment between their governance team of exactly what needs to be taken care of, what needs to be considered, and the AI development team. And so what they see this is a bottleneck. And what we would love to do together with Credo AI is we're really hoping with Foundry plus Credo AI, we're eliminating that friction by truly embedding the governance into the very core of the development workflows. And so we are on a mission to create a system where trust and speed and scale, they can all coexist. So through Credo AI, through you, we get access to this world's largest risk library and essentially the best mapping that I've ever seen of all the risks that they need to pay attention to based on the area, region, and the base model they're using, the type of the scenario that they're building AI for, all the way to what exactly needs to be measured. And Foundry then could provide those evaluations and measurement in a way that it's embedded in their governance framework. So they understand what needs to be measured. They can understand how to measure it with Foundry Evaluation SDK. And then once the measurements are generated, all of those results is not just available in the dev environment, but is then pulled back into Credo AI for this handshake between the governance team and development team. And this process happens in a super fast and speedy and accurate way. So I'm really excited because we're addressing essentially one of the biggest roadblocks and truly shifted from something that is, oh, we have to pay attention to, is a tax, to something that is very much your AI. It's built into the very core of your AI.
And Marnoosh, I think you've highlighted something really critical because for the longest time, AI governance was seen as a speed bump to innovation. But as you and I are finding out in our deployments, that when you actually have governance built in from the design all the way to development and then production, you actually have lower failure rates in production. You are able to actually get more AI applications into production faster. So maybe I would love for you to maybe dive a little bit deeper into a concrete use case that you might be seeing with Azure AI Foundry, where governance actually made sure that the failure rates was decreasing, that the confidence in the application that was built was much higher. Would love to maybe just dive a little bit deeper into a concrete use case.
So, for example, we were working with a tax company, the company that helps with a lot of tax applications, but also it helps with providing a lot of suggestions about how to fill your tax forms, etc. And so, this particular company was interested in multiple different things. First of all, extremely interested in whether my application is hallucinating, yes or no, whether the application, the generative AI copilot they put out there is capturing all the insights that it should capture in the response. So it's kind of like the other side of the coin as hallucination. Is it having any information loss? Because it's also important just to make sure that all the important notes are covered in the response to the customer. But besides that, we can imagine that that space is heavily regulated. So they deeply cared about areas that they should pay extra attention to, leakage of private information being one of them. So when I was demoing our integration to them, they were quite excited about such an integration of Credo AI and Azure Foundry. And the reason for that was they were paying attention to areas that they had heard should be important in their area, but they were not sure whether they are covering all the factors and all the facets that they should pay attention to. So we just filled a template together, and I was just showcasing it to them. And Credo AI was giving us a risk library from what is relevant to the application, all the way with evidence that is coming through integrated Foundry evaluators. And one thing that was interesting was they were seeing a lot more information on, okay, misinformation should be a concern. If we have ground truths, there are certain elements of not necessarily accuracy, but completeness of the answer, whether the information loss is happening with regards to the answer, or whether they should pay attention to not just leakage of information, but also like certain other elements being present in the response. So the risk library identified risks that were beyond what they originally had thought about. And what they had told me is, if we launch such a thing in our company, it's going to reduce essentially what they were saying is 70% of their time is going through these processes and this like capturing the green light from their stakeholders, of giving them the confidence that this particular application is not going to put them in hot waters when it's out there. It's not going to break trust with their customers. So they were saying that, wow, like with having this framework and this unified inventory of all of our AI solutions in one place, it's going to, in a fascinating way, expedite how we're taking an application to production. So I've seen that with another insurance company. I've seen that with a lot of healthcare companies. I've seen that with a lot of finance companies. So starting with regulated companies, but honestly, even the ones that feel like they're non-regulated also have been quite interested about the idea of having one inventory with a lot more education as what they need to measure.
And Mehrnoosh, Microsoft has been at the forefront of AI innovation. And one of the things that I was really excited about with the Azure AI Foundry is the launch of the evaluators. Could you talk a little bit more about evaluators, and especially carry us forward into how those evaluators intersect with governance and, again, getting that trust in these AI applications?
That's a great question of how evaluation and governance, they really weave into each other. So Foundry provided an evaluation SDK and embedded experience also in the Foundry UI for our thinking about what measurements should be in generative AI world. And now we're thinking about it in agentic world as well. So we started with a set of quality evaluators. Many of them are LLM judges themselves, or AI powered themselves. So the quality evaluators are the ones who look at the quality of your generated responses, things like whether it's grounded in the context or not, judged by another LLM, whether it's relevant to the question being asked, whether it is capturing all the details that should be covered, or in other words, completeness. It looks at things like how good quality and relevant are the retrieved documents or retrieval score. So that's the quality bucket. We added safety bucket as well, because it's been a top of mind for us as Microsoft as we develop our own AI, but also our own customers. And safety ones are things like whether measuring to what extent the generative AI application is providing sexual, hateful, violent, self-harm content, whether it's falling for jailbreak attempts, to what extent protected materials are being generated or not, to what extent, and things like, for example, so indirect jailbreak, if there was some context that indirectly flew into it that provided the model with like this kind of workaround to jailbreak its instructions. And then we added a third bucket, which are agent evaluators. So agent evaluators are our initial thinking of how we should go from more passive generative AI applications to agents that actually take action, called different APIs, call different tools. And those include things like tool call accuracy, whether it called the right tools, whether it passed the right parameters to it, whether it adhered to the task that the user and the meta prompt of that agent wanted this AI to really do or whether it went off the guard, off the rail, and things like intent resolution, whether it resolved the intent. And then, of course, we have our custom evaluator framework for folks to build their own evaluators if we're not supporting something. Known examples that I've seen people use all the time that are custom evaluators for are like friendliness for folks who are putting out chatbots, or competitor mention in cases where they don't want competitor to be mentioned. They can measure to what extent the model is actually providing competitor names. And the importance of it for evaluation, for governance, is it's evidence for those governance requirements. So what we see is that those evaluations results are the perfect handshake to bring together the world of developers and the world of compliance officers, chief AI officers, whoever is there to provide the green light. Without those numbers and some form of a comparison of or baseline of, okay, how over time those numbers are changing off of baseline, it's very hard for compliance officers, it's very hard for chief AI officers to really see, is this AI truly good? So I really love that people are really embracing the fact that these evaluators should be the evidence that is exposed in platforms like Credo AI.
And you know, Mehrnoosh, this is something that we are seeing a lot. Like Gen AI governance itself was a challenging task because it did a paradigm shift from just building your own first party AI applications to actually buying a lot of third party foundation models to build your Gen AI applications. And now, as we think about agentic AI, we are seeing a whole new set of governance challenges. You know, you mentioned a few of them, but alignment of objectives, especially across different chain of thought reasoning, really making sure that the right permissioning and authentication is available, making sure the intent resolution happens, especially when you are embedding so much autonomy and decision making into these AI agents. So maybe I would love to dive a little bit more deeper in, especially in Azure AI Foundry. Where are you more focused on in ensuring AI agents' reliability and trust?
The very first thing that we're seeing is we're shifting quite a lot from, especially in the governance world, we're shifting quite a lot from static reviews to more dynamic and real-time oversight. So we're investing quite a lot in, first of all, our partnership together. We're thinking about agents, which I'm really excited about for very near term. We're going to launch it together. But besides that, we would like to then back it with continuous evaluation of agents, better ways of red team agents, and provide ways for human in the loop tooling, and kind of like guardianship of these type of agents. And one other thing that we're quite invested on is, besides our observability story, it's transparency and traceability of agentic decisions, because we truly believe that it's a world where it's not anymore possible to really check off a system as compliant at launch. It's something that governance becomes a continuous guardianship, if you will, of AI as that agent goes and acts in the world. So what we started talking about at Microsoft Build, and now we're continuing on, is how we bring all of these different tools of having agent identity, having a way to really manage agents' access to physical resources where it can operate, all the data guardrails and sensitivity labels that needs to be applied to what agents are able to access in data, what they're able to provide in their responses, all the way to evaluating whether they are adhering to the task, whether they're calling the right tools, all the way to the right guardrails of, if they are not having task adherence, how to shift and fix that. And last but not least, monitoring them, looking at the tracing, looking at kind of like the audit trail of how they came up with decisions, and be able to bring the humans to the loop in critical situations where agents are going off the rail. And you can imagine how then that thing becomes even more, I would say, comprehensive to capture in a governance framework like Credo AI, as we need to capture all these details of how it's developed, but not just that, how it's doing with evaluations, what guardrails have been applied to it, what has gone wrong about it, let's back it up with traceability and transparency to give some form of a diagnosis to that, and then provide now what additional guardrails were applied to address that when humans were involved, when they should be involved. So all of that requires kind of like a rework that we're now doing together.
We're very excited about this, not only the right now agents governance, but as we look ahead, like fully autonomous systems, there's so much innovation to be brought. I'm curious, Mehrnoosh, like, could you share some early feedback on how this real time policy to code evaluators are really impacting this massive, I would say, chasm that has existed between the developers and the governance teams? And maybe again, feel free to give a concrete example, but I'm really interested in how is governance actually unlocking not only innovation but actually trust with these systems, and what examples are you seeing across your clients or across even some of the demo environments?
So the thing that I see quite a lot, also talk about it within Microsoft as well. We have our own responsible AI manuscript that we follow, and now it's expanding to agents that the entire company that is developing generative AI applications, including agentic application, needs to follow that. And we have our own committee who needs to approve the things. And so one thing that I was always seeing was the starting point was extremely vague sometimes for developers of the principles are great to have, but they are extremely confusing for a developer and often seen as an afterthought. They go through lengthy processes in order to build an AI system, and they're often like tested with some of their own queries, or some teams might have dedicated testers, but it's not often. And after that AI system is developed, it's very, very I would say it's a tax for them or burden for them. It used to be something that they are not really looking forward to, that, oh, it's like now I have to go through these compliance steps. Now I have to check this boxes and all of that. Versus what we're seeing with governance is it's truly your blueprint of what are the areas that if you build or weave into your development lifecycle from scratch, if you build the right guardrails for it, if you put the right evaluations for it, then it's super rapid and extremely fast for you to put it in production. So one example that comes to my mind with an external customer is they were building this patient summarization framework, and they deeply cared about hallucination being one of the top important problems that they were seeing in the initial testing, but they had no idea what else need to be measured or what else need to be put in place, and they had no idea what process they need to put in place. What we have to note is in some startups, people wear many hats, so they don't even, there might be someone like chief AI officer or product manager who is playing the role of a compliance officer. So again, when I was showcasing, for example, our integration to them, they were fascinated by the fact that, first of all, now instead of Excel sheets that captures all of the AI systems that are going on in their organization, there's actually a beautiful platform where you can go and you can see the list of in your inventory of everything that is happening in your organization. And that's also cloud, cross platform. So for big companies who might be cross cloud, that is a lifesaver. And so we went through one example that I captured one, and then we reached a point where we were showcasing the evaluators, and then they had a like place where they could assign reviewers. And so that was another interesting part for them, that they could see exactly what matters. They could see the evidence that they need to provide, but they also could see how to provide that evidence, how to run it in their dev environment. And then automatically the results were captured back. And the biggest feedback they had for us was also continue on that journey with capturing the guardrails and capturing maybe some of the initial human testing insights that have happened. So that's also archived in the governance ecosystem. So they were telling me that with something like this, maybe average of 20, 30 back and forth emails that they do through file sharing, Excel sheet sharing, and like just back and forth feedback sharing that is not captured anywhere but in their mailboxes is now down to one unified platform and one unified handshake that we have developed between Credo AI and our Azure AI Foundry.
Well, that's a great example because especially in the pace and speed of AI development, I think that's going to not only save hours, but again, with the right oversight, make sure that these applications are trusted. So Mehrnoosh, like a couple of final questions, we all are really bad at predicting the future, but we are really good at creating it. So I'm curious at Microsoft and especially the innovative work that you and your team are leading. What are you most excited about in Azure AI Foundry over the next 12 months?
I'm really, really excited about a couple of different things. First of all, we're building quite a lot on agent observability. I really feel like it's going to hopefully accelerate how companies build AI solutions specifically with agents and then give them the confidence as how they scale them. So I really feel like the folks are moving from custom GPT, copilots, and retrieval augmented generation application to a lot more agents. Everyone is thinking about how can they generate, I don't know, autonomous agents and how like what tools it should give access to and what APIs it should call. People are even talking about hyper boosting and scaling their own workforce by really having folks focus on innovating steps where AI is taking care of mundane steps that is not having as much as human, or it does not require as much as human intelligence and creativity. So I'm quite excited about our observability story, the monitoring, pre-production, post-production. Quite excited about how we're thinking about the agent trust together, of what guardrails need to be applied, and how to govern this very, very big a world of agentic AI where agents are very autonomous. They take actions on your behalf. And I really feel like together with Credo AI, we can truly outpace uh, um, a lot of different competitors that exist in this, just because we're now bringing the governance much closer to the development lifecycle and solving problems that were otherwise super costly or super slow to address. So excited about our agent work, excited about our observability work, excited about how we're developing the trust and bringing together different tools like Defender, Entra, Intune, evaluations from Foundry, Credo AI for governance into building a truly comprehensive lifecycle where folks could move to production in a super speedy yet safe way.
I love that vision, Mehrnoosh. I think this might be really useful for us to tackle. It comes up a lot. When you think about observability and AI security, how do you see it different or differentiated than governance? And especially for the audience that is just getting started with Azure AI Foundry, how should they be thinking about, the core difference between observability and governance?
I feel like at this point they are going extremely hand in hand. So the way I see it is governance is more like an enabler and informer of exactly what are the areas we need to enable observability on, what are the areas we need to enable evaluation on, what are the areas we should watch out with guardrails, what are the areas we should enable the right monitoring and watch it over time. And so governance becomes more like an enabler and informer of what matters, but also becomes that lens that you could use for your AI develop, for your compliance officers and chief AI officer, product manager, whoever plays that role in their organization, to then get information and kind of like a lens that looks into the observability and only extracts the right information that is important for that persona. So developers get informed by the overarching governance platforms like Credo AI as what matters. They implement it, they offer those insights back, and then the governance platforms becomes essentially the archive of all of these things that matters and help folks build AI fast in production. But at this point, honestly, the term governance and observability I'm using it in a lot of cases very interchangeably, but governance is a little broader than observability because it gives also that level of information of what matters.
And Mehrnoosh, I think that's a really good analogy because when we think about governance, it is the single system of record which brings
Exactly.
in, the trust, it brings in the oversight, it brings in the controls, because you might have these point solutions for security, you might have point solutions for observability, for evaluations, but governance is really that single system of record that helps make sure that the right decisions are not only getting enforced, but also the right insights are being brought back to the stakeholders that should be paying attention to it. So I really like that analogy, by the way, Mehrnoosh. I think that's a really good way to look at it. So I think a couple of last few questions, and then we will let you go. But as we think, looking ahead, governance and the need for trust is becoming even more critical. What really excites you about, not only our partnership, Microsoft and Credo AI, but really bridging this gap between the technical guardrails and the procedural guardrails, which has existed for a very, very long time. So I would love for you to dive a little bit deeper into, just looking ahead beyond what AI, Azure AI Foundry is bringing, but our partnership specifically. What do you hope from this partnership in the next 12 months?
One thing that I'll say is I've never seen people being more curious and interested in the area of AI governance. So when I started 6 years ago, it was a lot of going to people, convincing them they should care about responsible AI tools to begin with, forget about governance. Now, with everything that is happening, folks are understanding that trustworthy AI and responsible AI is AI. There is no other way that you build an AI without infusing all of these different requirements from the very scratch into it. That is growing your customers, that is building trust, that is not letting you end up in hot waters. So what I'm first of all quite excited is to push on our vision and adopt and have more companies actually adopt it in their life cycle. So I still see a lot of manual processes in the companies just because they've done it the way that they've done it, and that has created a little bit of habit. But now they're more than readier than ever, honestly, to push to this single record, single pane of glass for capturing all of their insights. So that's one area of just raising the awareness around this integration and having folks adopt it and experience it for themselves of how fast it makes their processes. The second part is what we discussed about for agent trust. I know that for agentic AI, there's so much more than just evaluations and maybe monitoring insights that needs to be captured in a governance framework. So I'm quite excited for us to work together to capture all of those policies that have been set for agents through maybe even different tools. As I mentioned, maybe data labels through Purview, maybe some device labels or policies through Intune, maybe some other agentic identity through Entra. So how can we provide all of those insights also into Credo AI to give a single record and truly make it comprehensive from all fronts of you look at evals pre-production, you can monitor evals post-production, you can take a look at all these other policies that have been set and kind of cross-reference it with evidence to see whether that has been implemented. And more importantly, I'm also quite excited to showcase together a lot of different use cases as to what extent we were able to save time for companies moving from ideation all the way to productionization in a very compliant way and report back to this audience as our vision of how fast things could be in a safe way. So quite excited. Your team is here in Boston. I'm very, very happy about that. And we're going to push together on this vision.
Well, Mehrnoosh, thank you so much. We are big believers that Microsoft and Credo AI partnership through this integration of Azure AI Foundry and Credo AI governance is truly going to bring the trust and speed to agentic AI development, but also agentic AI ROI for an enterprise. So really excited about what we are building together and excited to see the outcomes.
Thank you so much.